It's really common that within relationships, whether they be romantic in nature, friendships, family, working relationships, one or both people don't feel heard or understood at one point or another. And one of the most powerful communication tools we have and can work on in our relationships is validation. Validation of someone else means communicating to them that we see them, we hear them, and we can see the truth in their situation. It's communicating that we acknowledge and accept their experience non-judgmentally and empathically, even if we don't agree with them. This is an extremely important skill that we can use to improve our relationships with others and help us then move into problem solving. Validation is also so important for helping us manage conflicts more effectively or fight better. If you're in the middle of a conflict, it may help you to feel less angry or reactive. If you can take a moment to pause and look for the truth in what someone else is experiencing, or to try to understand their experience. When people feel understood or heard, they're much more receptive to hearing what you have to say and moving forward in a productive way. Remember, though, that validating someone doesn't mean that you agree or think that they're right. For example, if your partner or your roommate is telling you that they feel really hurt that you didn't have lunch with them when you had a break at the same time, and after work they tell you, you just don't want to spend time with me, but you were actually just really stressed and you had a lot on your mind. You weren't avoiding them. See if you can notice what urges come up for you, and instead can you try to validate their emotion, even though you disagree with their behavior or even the reason why their emotion is there in the first place. If they've told you they're upset, you might say something like, I can hear that you're feeling really hurt that I didn't have lunch with you today. If they haven't communicated how they're feeling, but you could just tell something is going on, they seem really hurt or angry, you might say, you seem upset. Is that what's going on? Do I have that right? You want to be sure to leave out the what? What are you so upset about? That's not a big deal. Leave out the shoulds. Leave out the judgments. Remember, you can validate a reason why a person is feeling, thinking, or doing something without agreeing what they're actually thinking or doing. Validating their emotion may not change how they feel, but we know that it can help de-escalate the situation and leave more space for the other person to then hear you say, it wasn't my intention to hurt you or make you feel angry. I really just had so much on my mind, and I had just gotten off a stressful phone call. And I can see that my not having lunch with you made you upset. There are other ways to validate someone else, and I'm going to share a few. The first way sounds pretty simple, but can actually be really hard if and when we're having our own intense emotional experience or in the middle of a fight. We want to first make sure we're actually paying attention and are awake for the other person. So what do I mean? When I say that, I mean treat the other person like what they're saying or doing is meaningful to you. If you're together in person, make eye contact without rolling your eyes, put your phone down, face them when they're speaking, actually be in the same room, right? Don't be yelling from across the apartment or the house, wherever you are. If you're on the phone, try not to multitask. Don't do other things. Pay attention to what they're saying and the tone of their voice. I think most people have had an experience where they were trying to talk to another person about how they feel, and that person was multitasking or had their back to you, and that makes you feel so much worse. It's hard at that point to not think that that person isn't listening to or understanding you. So number one strategy is just be awake and present. The second thing is you also want to try to validate with your words, right? Like we were saying before in our other example, try to understand what the other person's experience is. Ask yourself, what can I observe? Is there anything that I can acknowledge about what they're thinking or feeling or saying or doing without judgments like shoulds or shouldn'ts? You might say something like, this is really hard for you. I could see you're really struggling. How can I help? If your friend is feeling really lonely because they're isolated from other important people because of the pandemic, and that makes complete sense to you, instead of saying things like, it'll be okay, don't worry about it, or trying to right away put a positive spin on it, like, but at least there's FaceTime, you can acknowledge their feelings and let them know that it might make sense and is perfectly reasonable to feel sad and lonely during this pandemic. You might say, of course you feel sad. The pandemic has been going on for almost a year. That makes complete sense to me. Or anyone who is in your position would feel the exact same way. Or it sounds like you're feeling really sad right now. Remember, you do not want to say things like, you shouldn't feel that way, or it's not a big deal, you're overreacting, or try to make them see the bright side, because that could actually be the opposite of the goal of validation. That could be invalidating. A third strategy, if you're not sure what part of their experience to validate, you can ask a question to find out more in a way that shows you are genuinely interested and truly want to understand. For example, you might say, I know you said you're feeling really sad or angry or anxious. Could you tell me more to help me understand? In sum, everyone needs validation at one time or another. It isn't just about agreeing with, appeasing, or fixing the other person, or just repeating back what they've said. Instead, we know that consistently validating ourselves and others can really help with feeling heard and understood, and can help us build connections and maintain meaningful relationships.